look at whose views are well above, like at least 5x above their subscribers. You're going to get a great rate from those people because the entire market is so blinded by the vanity metric that is subscribers. Even though there's a lot of chatter about like, oh, they don't matter as much. Like, still a lot of brands like it's not their be all end all, but that's their entry point.
Welcome back to Creator Economy Live. We are live from Las Vegas.
Woo! Woo!
We have an extra special episode today. This is only the third time in our show's history that we are doing this in front of a live audience, but our 50 some odd episodes, so that's pretty cool. Shout out to our podcast sponsors and my compadres at Linkia and to the amazing Creator Economy Live production team who are here. See some of them. If you see them later, buy them a drink. Tell them that Brendan and I are doing a really amazing job as co-hosts of this podcast. All right, Brendan, who do we have with us today?
Oh my gosh. We've got your favorite creator's favorite creator. I pitched this to John. I was like, this is your new line. I love
it. I'll take it.
We've got John Youshaei, incredible creator. I'm sure you guys have all seen him. After 8 years at Instagram and YouTube, he's left to, I'm terrible. I always butcher these intros, and today is no different. After 8 years at Instagram and YouTube helping creators monetize, he is launched as a creator. He's a full-time creator, and he basically focuses on saying what he couldn't say while working behind the scenes at Instagram and YouTube, shedding light on the creator.
No more comms team that has to check everything. I'm unleashed. Yeah.
800,000 plus followers, 300 plus million views, interviews with Mr. Beast, Logan Paul, Paris Hilton, one of my personal all-time favorites, Oliver Tree, Danny Duncan, like this amazing roster of people, like from all aspects. I think from like the kind of more traditional celebrity who's sort of transitioned to creator to like the hardcore Mr. Beasts of the world. Incredible. We're so honored to have you here today. You're a wealth of knowledge. You've seen it all, done it all. And give it up for John Youshaei.
Too kind. Thank you, guys. Excited to be here. Excited to be on the other side of the conversation.
Yeah. So let's start with the obvious. You had what many probably in this room consider dream jobs on the social platforms, and you leave to do one of the most difficult things in the world, which is be an independent creator. So what the hell were you thinking, and why go on that journey?
I was thinking that we were 2 years before having our first baby, my wife and I, and she deserves a lot of credit because, when you spend your days at YouTube and Instagram with creators, you spend your nights and weekends wondering, maybe I could do that too. And I eventually was talking about it so much, she's like, okay, this was like peak COVID. We were planning our wedding. We were thinking about like what year we want to try to have a baby, all that, a lot of other variables. And she's like, if you're going to do this thing, we got to try it out before we have a baby because being a full-time dad and full-time creator is not going to work. Mm-hmm. And I remember we pooled up a ton of savings because I wanted to go into it as like not a hobby but a profession. And I wanted to make our productions from day one, upload one, higher level. And I'll never forget, I left my job and I sent out a bunch of texts to creators I had worked with at YouTube and Instagram. One of them was to Jake Paul at that time, and I flew to Puerto Rico, and when I was there, I also texted Logan, and I was like, hey, can I interview you? I'm here to interview Jake before his fight and talking about how YouTube, wrestling, that whole thing was happening. They both said yes, and somehow they were my first 2 episodes on the show. And I could tell you horror stories of how much I spent to produce that, flying out a crew, a ton of things I learned on the business side, getting a sponsor and all that. It wasn't all smooth sailing. But that's the shorter version of that story, just trying to send it and be like, we don't have a lot of time, let's figure this out. And it's been working out since.
Yeah, you came out of the gate swinging. It's wild to think it's only been since COVID. I feel like overnight you were like meteoric, like all over the place. Now, you mentioned the Pauls. They're huge. You've interviewed so many massive creators. Where did that come from? Was that just relationships you cultivated at Instagram and YouTube?
I think it's a combo of relationships and also, I'm curious, how many people in the audience, I don't know if we can interact with the audience on a live podcast.
Of course, go for it.
But how many people, and maybe I'll say this as well through the folks listening on audio, but how many of you guys have a podcast or make content yourself or trying to get collabs or guests and all that? So, okay, a good share of you in the room right now. So yes, relationships is a huge thing, but also I find the most underrated thing to try to land big collabs and big guests is Google Alerts. Like I set Google alerts for just about every guest that I want to have on my show. And I am watching the newswire and like what's going on. What do they have coming out? What are they promoting? And so I keep an eye on that. I'm like, okay, this thing just dropped from a movie that just got, announced, and the director got signed on. Let me keep tabs on this, because if it's already being promoted, it's probably too late. But if you're ahead of the cycle, you can be ahead of it. So relationships, timing, and then trust. Like I think a lot of times I'm trying to tell stories that are like, you don't understand this person fully. Let me tell you the full picture.
How many of these come from like a cold DM or email versus you getting a warm intro? Because obviously your network must be amazing coming from the platform side.
I'd say it started off like a mix of both, or going through a connection and then emailing. But a lot of times I would send a cold email, and we could talk about like the nuances of a cold email, a good subject line, like, I feel like we're all active on LinkedIn. That's like one of our main pillar topics, right? But I'd say starting out is probably actually more like 70-30, 30 relationship, 70 cold email and outreach, or like semi-cold or semi-warm, I don't know how you want to call it, like connection to a connection.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know this person, or you've worked with this person, would you be open to giving an intro, or can I talk to, somebody on their team, just to, because like Google Alerts is the public side of it, the private side of it is a ton of conversations to be like, oh, you guys are launching a product on this day, let me set a reminder and follow up.
I like the take that if they have something they need to talk about, they're probably going to be more likely to go on a podcast and talk about it. So I think that's a really interesting take. Talk about content style. So we're in a world where most creators are trying to be as raw, lo-fi, authentic, I'll say it, as possible. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, I'm blanking on who it was, where we were talking about how almost the shittier the quality, sometimes the better the performance. And you went as far the other way as you could. You, as you mentioned in the beginning, made Amanda, your wife, uncomfortable with the spend.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why go at it at high production just right out of the gate?
Because I believe in this thing called the paradox of production, which is if you're starting out and you have a smaller audience, your production value matters more because it is your first impression, There's this hilarious TikTok I saw where somebody has one of these mics, they're looking off into the distance and they're just talking, and then like midway through they break the fourth wall and look like, I'm not actually on a podcast, I have this whole setup just to like make you think that I'm important. But it just goes to show you that's like an interesting mental exercise, that just because of the freaking setup that they had and the higher quality video, you thought like, and obviously they pushed it too far, but that created a first impression that made you stop your scroll. And so for me, like back then I was like, everyone has a podcast. What do I want to do to make it different? How do I want to up the production quality? And initially it was like, okay, let's make have 3-4 cameras on set, each 4K, which nowadays is not as novel. But then I think the biggest thing we did was we brought in like a movie trailer editor to do our intros. And then the people we interview, they love those, because then it's like, oh, they could share it, and there's a whole science and nuance to like putting together intros and like sound design that I've learned a ton about. But yeah, I think it's your first impression. But then conversely, let's say you start getting more and more popular, right? Then people want to see it stripped down. Think about the extreme, like Kim Kardashian, people don't want to see her highly produced, right? They want to see it unplugged. They want to see her just like expressing her raw emotions, like, and that's cool, that's novel. But I think people confuse it by saying, oh my God, like I need to be authentic, so let me like screw all this like production like equipment, I don't need it. No, I think it's more important when you're starting out, but that's my hot take.
Yeah, I like it.
With the movie trailer approach, that is fascinating. Did you come up with that out of the gates, or is that something that sort of like through trial and error you arrived to?
100% trial and error, because if you look at my intros, it evolved in 3 phases. One phase, which I see a lot of people doing, was just montage, which was clip, 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 like no rhyme or reason, no real music, sound design, maybe like a track like that you got off any of these like audio sites. And then the second one was VO, so like then I like put my own voice in it. I was like, today we're talking to Danny Duncan, who is known as like one of the world's wildest creators, but he's also one of the smartest creators. Quote, 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 I had a chance to speak with Danny about how he went from homeless, to owning his hometown. I bought this for, and now we get to a point where like I try to ask a question during the interview that I can think about being in the intro.
Yeah.
And bridge it purely with stuff that was said on camera, no VO.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Your trailers are fantastic. I always ask people when I'm with them, what podcasts you listening to, what books you, and I find when they ask me, I'm saying podcasts that I don't even listen to, but I've watched all of the trailers and all of the cut downs. I think My First Million or How I Built This, one of those is also a master. And the trailer is so key, and that tactic you just described, now that you're saying it out loud, is exactly what the best ones deploy. They have their own voiceover, and then they cut in it's really, really smart.
TikTok is the trailer, YouTube is the movie.
There you go.
You love that line.
Yeah.
Dude, I love that line. I wish I could take credit for
And
it.
YouTube thumbnails are the movie poster.
What's that?
YouTube thumbnails are the movie poster.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We're just gonna keep riffing. This
Yeah,
is turned into an improv show.
Well, let's talk about brand partnerships. When we were doing the prep call, we were talking about advice for brands and what creators like to do versus what brands like to do. One of the biggest pieces of feedback, we hear all the time from creators, and I think we give advice to brands oftentimes is try and go for like the long-term partnership. It's like you can really go deeper. There's that level of credibility that comes with ongoing collaborations. A lot of people sort of make the Nike and Jordan analogy, the two, it was a 1 + 1 = 3 type scenario, but a lot of brands sort of resist that. It takes a lot more upfront planning and orchestrating and bigger budget commitment to fewer partners. What advice do you have for brands in the space? And then from the creator side, what advice do you have for creators who are trying to kind of guide brands to approach it in that way? And what have you learned to like help them sell that through internally?
Yeah. So just so I'm understanding the two parts of the question: what advice for brands, and then what advice for creators. Yeah, this is all fresh on my mind because of our prep call, but also Amanda, my wife and business partner, is giving a talk about all this. So she was putting her slides together. And one of the things that really stood out was I remember we signed a deal with a sponsor when we had less than 100,000 subscribers, and they locked in like a bargain. At that point, we're like, let's just like get like social proof sponsors and all that. And they signed us for 3 videos, and one of them did 1.1 million views. Another one did 600,000 views. Another one did 200,000 views. And they paid like rates like that were like, like maybe they thought they were going to get like 20,000 or 50,000 views.
Do you want to share the price?
I'll let Amanda share during her presentation. But for them, it was a great value add because like they were investing in a creator who was like on the up. And like for us, it was like, my God, like having the peace of mind that we were going to have brand deals, it didn't cover the cost, but it helped like offset some of it. And to know that like in those early days, if you look at our upload cadence, it was terrible. Like we went like months between some uploads because it was just hard to find, like, it was just like landing the sponsors, like negotiating, like redlining, like all the stuff Amanda was doing. It takes time. So when they came in, did 3 videos, another sponsor did like a batch, similar to that. Now we've had sponsors like buy up like 9 to 12 videos. And
oh, wow.
And so, and for those, now we've gotten smarter about like our growth rate and all that, but there's a ton of value in finding, okay, if you go to your YouTube app and you search, and you go to the search function, or even if you go to incognito, so your past search history isn't influenced by what you're about to look up, and search by subscriber count in a niche, so just type in a few keywords related to what you're trying to sponsor, what your business is about. Look at whose views are well above, like at least 5x above their subscribers. You're gonna get a great rate from those people because the entire market is so blinded by the vanity metric that is subscribers, even though there's a lot of chatter about like, they don't matter as much. Like, still a lot of brands, like it's not their be all end all, but that's their entry point.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsors at Linkia. If you need an influencer marketing partner to craft, execute, measure, and just up-level your influencer marketing efforts, you should be working with the best in the business. I know, I work there full time. Give them a shout. It's hello@linkia.com. Tell them Keith and Brendan sent you.
So if you look at like ratio to subscribers with views, I think you could get an upper hand. And I could talk about the creator side as well, but just trying to cater more to the brands that may be listening.
Say it one more time. So you go in, I see people like taking notes, including Brendan. Yeah. What, are you going into YouTube, or you just mean you're going into any platform?
Well, it depends on where you're trying to get a sponsor. So let me back up. So you're a brand, you want to sponsor a creator. you open up incognito mode, go to YouTube. Once you're there, type in a few keywords like, let's say you're a real estate brand or accounting company. You just type in a few words like tech season or something like that. And then YouTube will naturally default to showing you like videos related to that keyword. By being in incognito mode, you're already taking the stuff that's like at the top without biasing it with your past viewing history. So that's like step one. Then step two is you can filter by channel, and then you can start to see, related to this keyword, where the subscriber count's highest or lowest. And then from there, you can start taking a look at, okay, wait, that's a really high-performing video, high-viewed video. Did it come from a channel with fewer subscribers? And are they constantly punching above their weight class? If they are, you have a huge benefit in reaching out to them because, one, their inbox probably isn't as cluttered.
Yep.
And two, they would probably, those early days of being a creator, you are clawing, to try to make it. And so giving somebody, I'm not saying, lock them up for a year, but, giving them a 2-3 video deal, that will stand out.
Yeah, up and coming is, to me, the best way to get value. The hard part is, I think we've talked about this, the empathy on both sides is, I understand it from both sides. As a brand person, I look at it and say, yes, I would like to work with you over a longer period of time. Yes, I understand repetition is good, but because of the rates of creators these days, now I have to bet the house on 2 or 3 creators. I'm supposed to be scaling this thing, and there's millions of creators, and I'm pissing in the ocean, so to speak, with each post. I need to spread the wealth. So now, by nature, I'm going to 1 post each because I need more than 3 or 4, and that's what my budget would allow if these rates are real for these creators. So I have empathy on that side, and I also have empathy on the creator side to say it's going to work better. Repetition. Think about every podcast you listen to. If there's an ad for 1 episode, I will never remember that brand. But when they're the same brand doing the same ad for every single episode for that season or even for 6, I remember that brand. And so then it just becomes economics. If your rate for one is X and it's 5X maybe because there's efficiencies, can I really tolerate that investment as a brand knowing I still have to do this at scale? So the industry needs more empathy, I think, on both sides in general, because it's so easy to just say longer partnerships are better. Brands should do this. Creators should do this. There's a whole economy. There's both sides of this equation.
Yeah.
Well, and I have so much empathy on the brand side from navigating approvals. I remember, not to plug work that I've done in the past, but we did a 2-year-long partnership with creators a long, long time ago. And we spent over a year selling that through the strategy because it takes, you're having to roll up an annual budget versus them working off quarterly campaign budgets. And so there's a lot of upfront planning on the client side to make it work. And so I guess for the creators in the audience, that's sort of that's just the tip of the iceberg of what clients are dealing with, let alone all the legals and, legal processes, approvals, et cetera. It can be very difficult.
100%. 100%. What about long form versus short form? So I also find brands. So here's how brands think. With the short form, if you flop completely on an organic post, I can get a lot of value out of that content with usage rights from a short form perspective. And the whole thing is branded, and I can pivot it to other channels, and I could reformat it for a 1x1 and a 4x3 and 16s and or 15s and 30s and 6s. Long form, they've struggled a bit to say this is harder to repurpose. I'm just one, clip. But then I'll go to dinners with creators all the time, and they'll be like, I convert on YouTube significantly higher than I convert on anywhere else. So how do you talk to brands about the difference between long form and short form? And when you do long form, explain it. What is the partnership?
Yeah. No, we always lead for us, long form is the entree and shorts are the appetizer. And shorts are the upsell. Because to me, doing a short and putting in a brand message, I turn, it's harder to be just a pure creator engaging with my audience. I turn on my creative agency mode because I'm I need to develop an asset, like you said, and I need to make it good. I need to, it's and you want to respect the viewer's attention, you want to respect the brand's goals, etc. But I think that's where it's if you find a creator who's again, punching above their weight class, and that could be if they're 400, 500,000, subscribers, but then they're getting 1 million, 2 million views, it happens at every level. But to me, long form is that's where the money is. It's you're building a connection, you're building trust. I remember actually my start, I started doing the podcast, but then I was saying, months would go by between uploads, so I would do shorts. And I had this shorts format where I went on the streets of Hollywood and I asked people, who's more famous, Mr. Beast or Tom Cruise? and I'd have like just like literally these printouts from Kinko's, and who's more famous, like Kabi Lam or like Eddie Murphy, and it'd be like Logan Paul or Tom Hanks, and it'd be amazing that a lot of people wouldn't know who Tom Cruise is. Can you believe that?
Wild.
Right? And I went when like Top Gun Maverick was like out, and I stood in front of like their poster, and I had to ask people like, there's such a generation gap. Like who's that? Oh, Mr. Beast, or people like older generations. Like, I don't know who that is, and they would of course know Tom Cruise. My point being, those shorts got 40, 50 million views, some of them, crazy. But I never had like anybody like come up to me or like reach out like, dude, I love those videos.
Yeah.
They kind of help like build a base, and then I was like bringing them to the long form podcast. But if you think about those views versus like, I would take, 100,000 subscribers on YouTube over 1 million followers on TikTok right now.
But how does, literally, if I'm a brand and you're like, I'm interviewing Jake Paul, whoever, Mr. Beast next week, what is your mindset of how the brand is going to intertwine and fit from a long form perspective?
Oh, so I think of two things. One, is there something about that creator that I could speak to authentically in the integration, again, separate from the interview, that the brand would like? A perfect example is our interview with Marquez Brownlee. Our sponsor on that was Shopify. And they were really excited about it because Marquez has Adam's shoes, and he partnered with Ridge, both of which are powered through Shopify.
Yep.
So in the 60-second ad, again, like separate from the thing, I could be like, hey guys, today's video is brought to you by Shopify. And if you didn't know, like Marquez, like did it, and like kind of going through it and connecting like the organic side to the integration.
Do you tell Marquez and make sure they approve it? No, because it's more of an ad.
It's more, that's why it's separate.
Yeah.
And we're like locking those things in like tandem.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it just feels so separate. And there's just like, I feel like an understanding that podcasts will have ads. But yeah.
You've touched on it a bit, but the resources you've put into things. I think oftentimes there's this perception that creators are, one-man shows, doing it all. Can you speak a little bit about the team structure and resources? What does it take to become a creator business?
Yeah, like our own team structure.
Yeah.
So I talk a lot about this with Amanda, where we like to say, like, we're trying to hire more specialists and kind of trying to build like the Ford assembly line for like our creator business. And what that means is like our before versus after is very different in terms of how we ran our business. Like when I first left my job at Instagram, before it was, let's hire one editor after we like have our crew like get all the footage and just, hope he's a Swiss Army knife and hope that he could do the intro, the body, and the graphics. And if that editor existed, we couldn't afford him. And we quickly found out like there's very few editors who are great at all those three things. And if they are, they don't have the bandwidth to do it all at once.
Yeah.
So like we eventually evolved through a lot of trial and error, like vetting, like so many interviews and trial projects to like hire the right people, to where we're at today, which is we get the footage. We have like a process for like making sure we organize and download the footage, like create a master file, a transcript, and then we give it to our intro editor. We give it to the story editor, and then once the story is far along, we have the graphics editor like come in and like we make notes, add B-roll here, add like graphic here. If it's like a very involved graphic, like I'll go through and literally design it on Keynote, like Keynote and PowerPoint. I'll literally be like, I want this here, I want it to go there, I want a pie chart, and then they'll do it. And then these three different editors working in tandem has allowed us to move faster while keeping our quality high.
Wow, I got to get you a Canva login. Keynote.
Oh, we use Canva as well. Of course, yeah, we use Canva as well. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
That's wild. I think it was, it might have been Kim Larson, actually. You worked with Kim at YouTube,
yeah.
who, shout out to Kim, we have her coming on next week. I think it was her who was saying the number one need is editors. Like the number one need is editing right now if you're a YouTube creator, which is wild.
Editors are to creators as engineers are to entrepreneurs.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's
like
like
that.
you think about Silicon Valley and like how many people, oh my God, I need to find a good engineer.
Yeah.
Same thing in the creator world.
Yeah.
Except if you know where to look and you know how to train, I think it's more doable.
You want a side hustle, learn how to edit quickly. Editing is so valuable. We've played with a lot of the AI tools for cut downs on edits. They're good, but they don't get you. They don't get you all. You still need the person who knows how to use the tools who then could do the final part of it.
There's like always that last mile problem,
Of
I feel
course.
like, with like so many of those AI tools.
Yep. What about if I want to be not politically correct, but like if I ask 10 creators, rank your platforms, most of them are going to have YouTube at the top in terms of their monetization, their enjoyment. If I ask 10 brands to rank your platforms by creator partnerships, it's going to be Instagram, TikTok, and then YouTube will be a far third probably. Why?
Really?
Why is? Oh, absolutely.
Why?
Absolutely.
It's so interesting. Like,
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
you go
I have my
first,
own
'cause,
biases.
Well, I drink the Kool-Aid, so I feel
Yeah.
like. Tell me why? Like, I mean, because you repurpose the asset.
Yeah, I go back to most of creator value today on the brand side. And I'm talking big brands too. That's where most of my previous life has been and where I spend most of my time. The reality is you have to show results, and results broadly come in paid. I think it's great to hit something that goes trendy and inorganic, but the chance of you going viral or you starting a movement is low. So most of the thought process for brands, and this is what I spend so much of my time doing, is where are all your media buys? How much are you spending on these channels? What are the specs of the channels? And I have a whole post-production team that sits there and just goes, okay, here's my creator assets. I'm going to make 1x1s, 4x3s, 16x9s, 9x16s, 15, 6s, 30s. And that is the majority of the value. And frankly, it's much easier to do that when I start with a 9x16 TikTok or story asset. The YouTube becomes very hard to extrain all that value. Not to mention, even though I think YouTube is more successful at the conversion mechanism, you're still not going to get scaled conversion for the cost. And so brands have trouble MMM modeling and doing all the stuff with YouTube. So that's my bias. I don't know if I just polluted the water, but I am curious to hear, because I assume you will say yourself, YouTube all the way.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like this is a place you could diversify. I mean, think about the stats. They've given away like over $50 billion to creators through their partner program in just the past few years alone. And then you think about all the other like money that creators can make on top of that through brand deals, affiliate, etc. You know, it's like, and every creator I interview, like they always like talk about like if they're a TikToker or Instagrammer, they're trying to build and diversify.
Yeah.
Like going to YouTube. To me, I like to think about like YouTube is like the truth. It's like New York City. Like if you can make it on YouTube, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like.
But only 1% can make it, in terms of monetizing through non-brand partnerships, if you're not in that top, 1 to 4%, which you kind of are, so I think you have a different viewpoint too. If you're not in that world where you can monetize and make a living off of non-brand sponsorships, you need brand sponsorships, and most of those dollars are coming through TikTok. I think it's going to change. But that's where most are. What do you think about, can I give you your red meat, LinkedIn? Thoughts on LinkedIn as an actual creator platform?
Oh, I think it's great, and I love the professionalization of the creator economy. I just think like I'm curious to see where it goes with video, because if you guys open up your feed, you're obviously seeing a ton of vertical. Yeah, like I mean the brand money. I mean you can speak to this better than I can. The brand money's coming in. Like I think it's really interesting. We were talking about in our prep call. One thing that like a manager and like a lot of brand folks I talk to say that I think is really interesting is like when they work with creators, sometimes some of them look for past work experience, because there's a professionalism that comes with working with a creator who's had a job before and has navigated an organization and has prompt on email. So it's not just about the delivery of the content, it's the process to make sure it's smooth. And I think with LinkedIn, you're almost guaranteeing that you're getting that every time, because they were there first because of a job.
Yeah.
So I think it's real. I mean, I love LinkedIn, and that was actually my first platform in terms of like trying to do it as a side hustle. So I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, you're killing it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, to that point though, on video, I know that Microsoft shared their earnings report, and video had grown, I think, something like 36% year over year. Yeah. And they rolled out a bunch of new updates. They announced yesterday. Video is going to appear more in search, and I believe that they rolled out watch time metrics and a couple other data points and stuff. So they're going all in on video, and there's a ton of opportunity there.
I love it. I mean, my one qualm, if you want to bring this back to your LinkedIn team, is on LinkedIn, I'm typically there to follow highly experienced, deep thought leaders who frankly are terrible at creating video content. And their commentary is kind of why I'm there, and their long form. And so I'm now moving more towards their, Beehive, Substack newsletters, because that's where they can elaborate, whereas that was LinkedIn for me. And now it's getting a little bit of just, can you create entertaining, good video content?
So you prefer consuming their text, basically?
I do. And now with the new format, they're hiding the text. It used to be you see the video, you see all the text. Now it's just video, and you got to like expand on the little text thing. So Note in my note box.
Yeah.
Suggestion box.
Well, it is interesting, like, not to go too far off on that tangent, but like about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, they made a whole announcement around like tacking back sort of towards the professional and social graph, and sort of all the other platforms have gone for the interest graph.
Yep.
And then, but with the introduction of video, you almost have two different. I got it.
I knew it.
You basically have text, which seems to be much more, who you're opting in to see.
Yep.
And then video, which is much more, I think, like interest-based, probably in large part because it's not as widely adopted. So there's almost like two separate discovery mechanisms. But it'll be interesting. I mean, 60% of social is video now, and so I think they had to make a move. But one thing, you were talking about YouTube. I think like the other thing that's really interesting with YouTube is like people, the parasocial relationship is so critical, and like while you get scale with TikTok and Instagram, I've never seen the level of sort of like engagement and participation as like a great YouTube integration. Like a creator can like spend 30 minutes explaining something, and you've got like 80% retention, and like then they ask their audience to do something and you get thousands or hundreds of thousands. Like you crash websites and stuff. Other platforms don't quite have that, which is wild. But it is tough because it's much harder to scale.
It's harder to scale.
Yeah.
Do you have the LinkedIn newsletter?
It's actually like our main newsletter is through email.
That's what I was gonna ask.
And then we just like put it out a few days later on LinkedIn. But it's been really interesting because we've been experimenting with lead magnets, and that's been a whole thing. We're actually just about to launch our next one with our next video coming out. I'm really excited to see how it does. It's going to be called our YouTube Hack Pack.
Okay.
And it's like all my best stuff, like for free, like intro templates,
that's great.
like 10 intro templates, 100 video ideas and formats and breakdowns of why they work, and then a course called Confidence on Camera to like be more confident on camera. If you guys, I haven't shared the link yet, but it's YouTube at ythackpack.com. But yeah, like email, it goes to the email, and then it goes to LinkedIn newsletter 2 days after the email hits your inbox on Thursdays.
And do you find you're increasingly with brand partnerships trying to say, hey, let's do something where there's newsletter presence, there's video, there's short form? Yeah. Like, are you trying to build more of a package deal?
100%. I think as a creator, we're trying to create a buffet.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know why I'm giving so many food analogies, but like YouTube is an entree, then the other like platforms are the appetizers. So newsletters increasingly becoming like part of that, and people see like great conversion through that, and it's so interesting because I always try to think about sponsorable sections before they're sponsored.
Yep.
So we had this like part of our newsletter. We have like 3 parts of our newsletter. We have like 2 news stories, and then we have thumbnails of the week, and then we have an outlier of the week. So thumbnails of the week, I work with my team. We curate the 4 best thumbnails that we've seen on YouTube in the past week. And an outlier of the week, we find a small channel, and we try to see like what video has outperformed that past week. And recently we had a sponsor come in. It's like, we want to sponsor outlier of the week.
Yeah. That's really cool. These are gold nuggets, people, by the way. Like, I mean, I know you're framing it as if you're a creator, but every brand is a creator too. And I think designing for the end is a big part of it.
100%.
The podcasting is a great example of, we literally every other week we get on, I'm doing the same thing. Like, what is going to be our cut downs?
Yeah.
Like, what is there going to be a quick hitting moments?
You're good about that, yeah.
Yeah, you kind of just show up and say, what are we doing today?
Yeah, I
love
gotta
that
give
about
you
I love
major
that about
props. Thank you. I would this thing would not be doable without Keith.
But you have to think that way. You really have to think that way. And I think it makes some people like not uncomfortable, but they're just, let's just do it. Let's just see what like they just want to go with the flow, and you can't operate that way. It's no different than a shoot, which we all know. You go to a TV shoot, you go to any type of professional production with a creative agency, and it's an afterthought of, all right, we'll send you some things for social. No, you got to be there saying, what is our 15 on social? What is our organic like tone here? So I think it's a really smart way of going about it. And I do think the integrated approach of multi-channel is going to be the big year for that. 100%.
Random question. You've got so many great insights and little tactics. What are some tools that you use that you love that like maybe people aren't aware of? Like I don't know, like every once in a while, like I'm like geeking out. I find some, Chrome plugin or, Social Blade is like an institution now at this point, but it's like so valuable. And it's like, if it wasn't on your radar already and you like stumbled across it, you'd be like, what the hell? This is like a wealth of information. What should we have on our radar?
Like I feel like there's so many like good like tools out there. I mean, you asked for like underrated and like maybe like something that's like off the beaten path, but like talking about cold emails, I love using tools that help you find somebody's email address.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you guys there's this amazing app that I think it went defunct. It's called Reportive, but it was like a Chrome extension where it would like fill in the person's face when you guess their email right. But Hunter.io is another one where it's like it'll give you like different like combinations of their name and give you a percentage of confidence or like that's their email at this company. And you obviously want to use that like sparingly and responsibly, not to spam folks. But again, like the right cold email can get you to the right person, it can get you the right brand deal or like a guest or a collaboration. So I've thought about that a lot, and yeah, so that's like one thing that helps make that process easier.
Sorry.
I was just saying brands should do that more with other brands too. Like the brand collab route. This is creators make a living off working with other creators and taking some of their audience. Like brands need to be doing the same thing. I think every brand should have a brand partnerships lead, and that should be a big bet for them.
Yeah. Who's the dream guest that you haven't gotten yet? Because you've gotten like you had like Tony Hawk. Like I mean, it's really insane. Like how many people you've had between the between your podcast and then the one you had with Danny Duncan. It's like crazy.
It's hard to like. It was Casey Neistat, and I like spent years just like trying to make that happen.
Is there a story there? How did you make that happen?
Oh yeah, it was like, how much of this story can I share?
All of it. Nobody's.
All of it. That's as a podcast, you're like, this is the stuff. Like, go in. It's just us talking.
It's just us.
So Casey is like, it's so amazing how he's still so in his edit. And so I remember I was in New York, and I just shot my shot. I was like, Casey. So I crossed 500,000 subscribers, and I saw that he liked the thing on Twitter. And like I had met him briefly at YouTube, but it was like in and out. And then I remember I did. Going back to that short thing where I did like creator versus celebrity on the street. I did Casey Neistat versus George Clooney. And it was hilarious. I think that video did a lot of views. And then Casey posted the TikTok of it on Twitter. He's like, I don't know what this is, but this may be my favorite TikTok. Something like that. Like my favorite YouTuber was tweeting about like one of my TikToks. Like what is going on? So that was a few years ago. So all these things had kind of been building. And then I made this post about crossing 500,000 subscribers, and he liked it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna shoot my shot. So I DM'd him. And I was like, Casey, I'm coming to New York for a few other interviews that I had scheduled if I have time, or if you have time. Like, I'd love to. Like, I'll clear my schedule, whatever it is, to do an interview. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, no. But then I'm in New York, and then he's like editing it, he's editing his video. He's like working on one of his videos, and he only puts out a few uploads every year nowadays. And it ended up getting rescheduled so many times, and I was just like. I basically had to have a crew waiting. I basically paid a crew to be waiting whenever he was ready. And I never told him any of this because I was just like, whenever you're ready, no rush. And it took about 4 days of just like being there in New York.
Yeah.
And just trying to be like, I hope like, he finishes the video or whenever he's ready and he has like that peace of mind to do it. And then.
Were you actually going to be in New York, or was this one of those like, I'm going to be?
No, I was.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was. That was an amazing. Like we did Dr. Mike interview. We did Binging with Babish, and then Casey. But yeah, Casey, I just like kind of
That's
like
amazing.
had to keep like a bunch of days open and be in limbo, but it was worth it because we sat down and it was like a 2-hour interview.
It's amazing. Babish exploded too, by the way.
Yeah, Babish was that. He was really gracious, and his team was great. So they were coordinated ahead of time, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna keep a few days open, but that could have been really bad because I could have just been traveling with that, But I'm glad it worked out. I'm grateful to him.
Years ago, did a pro bono campaign. We had Casey, and like similar thing. It was like. You just sort of like hope he shows. It was like I think the third production day. We'd set up several, and then it was the third time he showed up.
Oh, and that's the other great point is like when I was coordinating with him, I had spoken to other people who either had them on his podcast, or like had worked with him, and I didn't take any of this personally. So he was like rescheduling. I'm like, he's working.
Yeah.
He's a creator first. He's not a podcast guest.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whatever he has to do,
Yeah.
to be in a good state of mind. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like it'll happen at the right time. And when it did, it's like, 2-hour podcast, and I'm like in his office, like, what is going on?
Well worth it. Yeah.
So do you have an answer though to who is the dream next?
I don't know. I don't want to jinx it. I'm very superstitious.
All right,
but,
fair.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to make you then in cow. We're going to go to cow bow because I'm seeing we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll make you pick a cow that's not the same question, but like one that you look up to. If you're a creator's favorite creator, who's your favorite creator right now? All right, so cow bow, follow. We do our creator of the week, our brand of the week, and our follow. We do this every other week, so we try to make it more timely. If you want to do your favorite of all time, whatever you want to do. Brendan, do you want to kick us off? Do you have a creator of the week?
Yeah. It's the one I've gotten a new habit of. I text Keith the weirdest Instagrams and TikToks, and I like sending them at weird hours because then I get a response like, "What were you doing? Where did you find this?" And so like I just am like finding weirder and weirder Instagram accounts, and so this new one I had to look it up. It's Gabriel _E. I'm probably gonna butcher this. Chichilina. We'll put it up on the pod. But so anyways, it's a guy. His format, he's perfected. This is incredible. It's this dude. Half the time he's shirtless. He's rocking out to disco music at a table. He's got a pet pig, usually wearing a hat and sunglasses. He's got a duck and a parrot, and he's usually wearing a sparkly helmet. And he's rocking out to disco music, feeding his pig, and it is incredible.
We have such different For You feeds. It's wild.
This is like
it is
the
so wild.
greatest thing on the internet right now.
I enjoy them. They're always in weird times when I really need them most.
Yeah.
Raccoon always helps me when you send me the raccoon.
I wish people could see this. Like here he is. He's just like rocking out. Yeah. He's wearing a tie, dancing, feeding his pig.
Is this recommended to you, or you like?
Yeah, it was recommended to me. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Just
Right.
Who goes and searches shirtless dude rocking out to disco, feeding a pig with a parrot and
I've said that I want TikTok to come out with a feature where I could like embody someone else for a day in their For You feed. If I could just take over Brendan's For You.
Or if you ever really want to get to know someone at Instagram, we'd always say like an icebreaker we do is like check their explore page.
Explore, yeah.
You get to really know them.
Yeah.
If you're in a relationship, check your partner's explore
That's
page.
a terrible idea.
That's the takeaway.
All right, we got to go double time. So I'm going to we're recording a few days before the Super Bowl. This will go live right afterward. I'm going to do all of the creators who are going to do amazing work in the ads this year on the big screen and not. I'll call out a few of them. We've got Dylan Bradshaw and Nate Norville won the Doritos challenge.
Yes,
They're doing the Doritos commercial.
Yeah.
Alex Earl, Jake Shane, and Rob Roche are doing the Poppy one. But there's a lot of amazing creators who are showing up at the big game, which is really cool to see.
Yes, the big game. That's what we have to call it, right?
Yeah,
the big game. Oh yeah, Nate's video is amazing. I'd say there's so many things. I think it's red carpet season. The Grammys was the other night, and I really love this creator, Matt Friend. I don't know if you guys.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's hilarious.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
I remember we kind of came up together on Clubhouse. If you guys remember that app, RIP. And now to see him like on red carpets and just really changing the convention of what a celebrity interview is by doing impressions, by just like cracking jokes and like being a very talented comedian on like the biggest stages and just humanizing a lot of like big folks. Just something to watch, especially as we get closer to like the Oscars and the few awards that shows that we have coming up.
His Paul Giovanni cracks me up.
Impeccable.
All right, Bao, brand of the week. What do you got?
So I was going to go with ChatGPT because I think there was all this controversy or like fear as a result of DeepSeek and everything, but and then they rolled out Deep Research, which I think basically shows that they're being very, very competitive and innovating. But impromptu, I don't know if you consider this a brand, but last night I got sold hard on Love Island.
Okay.
And that's like all I heard about at dinner. Apparently that's the greatest show on TV, so I need to watch that.
It's on brand for you.
I'm more of a Love is Blind guy, but that's okay. That's okay.
I like it. I'm keeping my theme of the big game. I'm going Instacart. I think their commercial absolutely killed it. They have all the characters from all of the big brands. They had the Wiener Dog. They had the Old Spice guy. They have Jolly Green Giant. They have all of them. The Doritos Tiger, all in this ad, which was so brilliant to me. And then their surround sound reminded me of CeraVe last year. They're doing Dumois, the celebrity gossip thing. They shot paparazzi pictures with the Old Spice guy walking around with the Wiener Dogs, and they're taking the Wienermobile and doing deliveries. just so smart. There's this breadcrumbs trail. All of the characters are like bantering on their social accounts. Bravo to the Instar team. I think who's that? Laura is their team. Oh my God, they were doing.
I love a
such
fully
good work.
integrated campaign.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
So that's my bow.
Yeah. I was gonna go with Doritos, just the way they're engaging creators and getting them to promote. Like they did this whole competition to get people to submit like ads for the big game. So just seeing that and also seeing like the creators get excited about it, because I think that was promotion in of itself beyond what will play around the big game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
smart.
more about the surround the big
Yes.
game.
Yeah. Surrounding conversation. 100%. Yeah.
All right, follow. Quick.
I'm gonna say you, Keith Mendes on LinkedIn. You're crushing
You
it.
need to hug? Like, what's happening right
Well, I mean,
Look at
like,
these co-hosts,
technically,
guys. This is amazing.
I'm
just in the middle of a bromance.
You keep this podcast on track, and I'm incredibly grateful to you. And yeah, I mean, I really appreciate it. And also, your stuff is amazing.
I was like 50% sure you would show, either of you would show. I'm like, if I have to sit here by myself, I knew Brendan was going to go out. You said you weren't going to go out last night, and I knew.
That was my whole night. It was like, no, I'm not going to go to the next thing. And then I went to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. I don't know why I
I'm
did
gonna blush.
that.
You're making
I
me
love those
blush.
photos of you at Omnia. That was great. Just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah.
My follow is the White House is opening press briefings to creators and
that's cool.
podcasters, and
Great
within
call.
24 hours of that announcement, they had 7,400 credential requests. So I'm following. I'm very curious. Who are they going to give these passes to? I'm so curious. We don't know that answer yet, but we will probably soon. But I think it's really cool. I think it's the right move for the White House to do.
Yeah. I say follow these guys. I think it's really cool that what you guys are doing, a live like podcast, and just I love the like insight that you bring to the creator economy, because it's like we need more of these conversations.
Love it.
And I think a lot of times like creators like fly blind when they're starting out, and just hearing about the brand side as well as the creator side is super important. So I really appreciate you guys having me on and putting this together.
Thank you. And we love when creators are here, but there's mostly brands as the community, and there wasn't really something for brands, and we really felt like that was needed. But I appreciate that.
Of course, yeah.
Dude,
All right.
Thanks for coming on, by the
Yeah.
way.
Oh,
we
thank
are
you.
flattered. Like, this is awesome.
No, thank you for having me. And what I love about these events is like continuing the conversation. So I'll stick around, and if you guys want to chat, and just looking forward to meeting everyone here. And thank you again for having me. This is a pleasure, and all the prep that I know the other side of it, all the prep that you guys put into this, I really appreciate it.
Love it. All right. Thank you, Vegas. We will see you next year. Thank you all.